one of the I think you mentioned to me at least one of the things that was tough for you that I know that you recently experienced was coding for 100 days
Hmm.
straight.
Hmm.
And a lot of the people that actually kept you going, because again, I would never forget, it was this one phrase, see it through, my boy.
Yeah, yeah,
That was a one phrase that you were saying. I was even saying it to you because
every
again, just
day.
doing something every day,
Hmm.
nonstop. For how long, like in terms of hours, were you doing it for?
At minimum 3 hours a day. It
No.
was a lot. It's crazy.
Yeah, so you're doing something for 100 days for
For
three
3 hours.
hours out of your day.
Yeah.
How is it, like, how do you see that go through?
Look, hell of an intro. I tell you what you in for, but I never really been the type of dude to give no info.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Walking Grill Show. It's Ronnie and Courtney on the mic, and today we have a special guest. And I'm not gonna mention he's special. He's my good friend. He's my good brother. He's actually Courtney's, I shouldn't say favorite artist, but she knows his lyrics word for word. So if
Oh
you guys
wow.
know
That
the
is true.
song that we play going into our episodes, this is the man behind the mic. It's Leon, man. How you doing, my boy?
That's awesome. Glad to be here. I'm doing well. That's a nice intro to hear that you know all of the lyrics to
I
some.
didn't know. I didn't know I was going to be involved in the intro, but yeah, I listened to it quite a lot of times, so
That's awesome.
I did learn the lyrics.
That's awesome.
That's
Thank
funny.
you.
Courtney, how are you doing?
I'm good today, thank you. Yeah, I know. That's all I got for you, Ronnie. I'm doing well. All right, let's see. I'm doing well. It's Saturday. We're recording on a Saturday, which is weird,
Yeah.
but it's the weekend, so yeah, things are good. I think
That's
good is
good.
valid
That's
today.
Okay.
okay. That's fair. Yeah, it's a thing between her and I that we have where you say good. It's like, what does good really mean? That's why, Leon, you're probably like, where are
Yeah.
y'all going with this? But it's
Uh-huh.
everyone. Whenever you ask somebody, how are you doing? Everybody says, I'm good. So it's like, all right, what
Yeah.
does good mean?
I'm good, but I can back it up.
And that's fair.
As
That's fair.
someone who feels like my enthusiasm level is always at like a six, a good is my default answer. So I
Hmm.
get it.
Yeah, a six is a solid number for where I'm
Yeah,
at right
it's
now,
like
so it's good. Yeah.
hmm.
But let's go ahead and dive right into it. Really want to get to know you a little bit more, but I want to also touch upon what I've mentioned that I think Leon's great at. I think he's really good at making and breaking habits and staying disciplined. So if you guys are interested in hearing how can you be disciplined, how can you make and break habits within your daily life, you're gonna want to hear what Leon has to say. Because I mean, he's done some things, and he'll probably speak more about what he's going to do, and you're probably like, why would you do such a thing? But
Hmm.
anyways, Leon, let the people know a little bit more about who you are, what you do, what you've been doing, what you did in the past, just so they can have a little context of who this guy is speaking on this mic. Like, what relevance does he have?
Well, as Ronnie mentioned, my name is Leon, and I'm gonna coin this for the first time ever, but I'd like to call myself like a life engineer because I've gone to school for audio engineering, and I'm currently a software engineer. And I think the word engineer means encompasses just like building. And for a long time, I've built my life based around like my habits, certain schedules, things that I want to have be disciplined about, and things like that. So that's the first time I'm gonna say that I'm a life engineer. But with all those things said, I'm an artist, I'm a creative, and I'm a tech guy currently. So that's where I am.
Nice, nice. So there's no coincidence, guys. This is probably the third musician that we've had. This is not something that we're doing intentionally. It's just happened. You know,
Hmm.
it's just happened the way it is. So, given that you've done so much within your past, I just want to kind of go right into it and just hear more about what is it that helps you make habits. Let's start there, and then we can talk about breaking habits because I know breaking habits, and when I mean breaking it, it's just like stop doing something that you've
Mhm.
been doing for such a long period of time, and now you're like, man, what is my life going to look like, or what is that going to look like moving forward? But making habits, because making habits, creating habits, whatever word you want to use, I want to hear how is it that you go about doing that, Leon.
So for me, I kind of consciously went into my 20s. I'm 29 now. I went into my 20s with the intention of learning something new every year. And in that, I studied a lot of like psychology, and I wanted to learn myself and just be self-aware. And I always told people that if psychology paid more, then that would be my major. However, however,
Ouch! That one hurts. Ouch.
I'm sorry, Court. I no, but I think it's a noble field to follow because psychology and sociology, just learning people, learning yourself, I think is extremely noble and important. So with that being said, I kind of took it upon myself to learn what makes me tick, what, keeps me going, what motivates me and things like that. So, throughout my 20s, I just deep dived and I'm a big advocate of I feel like my life is really a big experiment. And in my 20s, I prepped for my 30s. So I do things like I purposely go to sleep super late for a week, see how that affects my mood, my work ethic, everything else, and then I'd stay on schedule for a week, and I'd write these things down, just like I'm doing a whole experiment. You have your control, you have all these things. So I want to say since COVID hit, I haven't been as consistent with my habits, and that's something that I'm trying to break back from. But for the first half of my 20s, I was a machine. Like I everything was just to the letter and to the T. Some people have admired me for it. Some people have like called me out, "Oh, you're too rigid. Like there's no way that you can function like this." And I'm like, "Well, I'm doing a big experiment on myself." So it's been nice.
I my of course first question. Um, how do you like learn to start that? Because I feel like a lot of people when they get into it, it's because other people have, or in my experience, it's like therapy would have taught me that, or going to school would have
hmm
taught me that. But you said like your early 20s. How do you just know that this is something I want to try, or I want to take in all of this
hmm
information? Where does that come from?
So, um, I like to call myself like a student of success. So when I went to school in New York for audio engineering, I was 18 and I went through a little bout of depression for like 2 months. And to get myself out of it, I'd listen to inspirational videos from just people that I admired. First one I ever downloaded was one from like J. Cole, and it has the piano, the soft piano in the back, and it talks about like his trials and tribulations. Then I just got hooked on listening to that type of stuff, because it just keep me afloat. So then that in turn turned into just me saying, all right, how am I going to be like these people? So then you read a book like The Seven Habits of Highly Successful People, and then you go down this rabbit hole of chasing success and what do those habits look like. So, the blueprint is pretty much laid out. There's a quote that says, if you want to hide money from people, hide it in a book, right? And I think there's something to be said about that because books are a wealth of knowledge, and I read a lot. Like I've read hundreds of books. I want to say thousands, but I don't think it's up there yet. But I've read a significant amount of books, and I just wanted to emulate what the people that I admired were doing. Like Mark Cuban is one of my favorite billionaires, and like he partied in his 20s, and it's like how are you worth $5 billion and you had no focus? So you kind of find the balance, and I just studied people to short answer. I studied a lot of people and I wanted my life to be exactly like those people.
That's
You
cool.
got to follow up with that one, Courtney, or no?
Well, I was gonna say, no, I think that's really cool. And when you mention, no, we don't have to take it down this path, but when you mention like depression, when you have those types of
Mhm,
experiences, I think your choices are like, do I sit with this and kind of like
mhm.
struggle through it, which is valid. Some
Yeah,
people like you need to take that time, or what we say all the time, do I control the controllables and like what
mhm.
can I do? Then you test it and does that work and has it been working for me and go from there. And it
Right,
sounds like you
right.
chose, the second where I'm going to test what's best for me and go from there. So that's really cool.
Yeah. I I never felt it before, so it was weird to me. I was like, what is this? Like I'm usually happy all the time, and
Yeah.
um, it came. I want to say I was always a self-aware person. Like I always just paid attention to myself and then my environment and how certain things affected um both of those things, myself and my environment. So like if I was a mopey person, I wasn't friendly, I wouldn't have friends. Like there were times in high school where, I'd sit at the lunch table by myself and it wouldn't be like, oh, there's the weird kid sitting by himself. It's like I'm reflecting. And I had a friend of mine tell me, she was like, you should be more approachable. Like there's no reason for
Mhm.
you not to be friendly. And I was like, I didn't think that I wasn't unapproachable. I just didn't talk to everybody. I sold candy and that was it. Like I didn't feel like there was a lot to talk about. And so I made a conscious effort to be more friendly, be more approachable, smile a lot more. You know what I mean? And I think that kind of was the spark for being self-aware, and I'd say that was like at 16. It's like, okay, somebody came to me with a problem and a solution. It's my choice to take it and refine who I am, or just be like, ah, whatever, I don't really give a shit what you're saying. And I didn't want to be that type of person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting when you're talking about self-awareness and just I'm starting to reflect and like, man, when the hell did I become self
Yeah.
reflect like just self-reflecting on myself and what it is that I'm doing and kind of just looking back. And honestly, I can't say it's been recently. It hasn't
Yeah.
Hmm.
it's not like something for me where I've been doing this since I was hey, I like 8 years old or
Hmm.
20. Like this is something more recently that I've been actually participating and practicing in. So to hear that
Yeah.
you've been self-reflecting on yourself since you were 16 years old and now
Yeah.
you're 29, it's like good god damn, what the hell
Yeah.
did you really learn about yourself to the
Yeah.
point where it's like, you really could take a deep dive. So I recommend everybody. I mean, I know that you're a big advocate for journaling, and you
Yeah.
always say this to all of us. You say, and I say all of us because we talk on a group, but whatever. You say journal, and when you journal and write it down, don't put it
Absolutely.
in your phone, don't put it on a computer, like actually
Yep.
write it down, because the effectiveness that writing something down. He's about to show us his journal right now, look at
I got my journal
that.
here, and I just write
Wow.
Nice.
every day. But go on, I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, just actually when you're gonna reflect, is actually write it down.
Hmm.
Because I know writing down does help. I just don't self reflect as much as I probably could, because I could learn a lot more about myself and learn exactly what works for me, what doesn't work for me. For you to even say like you ran tests on yourself, it's like, yo, are you a
Yeah,
doctor?
yeah. And to that point, I feel like there's people who go their entire lives without being self-aware. Because ignorance is bliss. You don't, it's a very, very dark path going internally and saying, this is something I think is wrong with myself, and this is something I think I could improve on. You know what I mean? And even saying these are the things that are right for me and I'll keep doing it, that takes a lot of, discipline in and of itself to say, all right, I'm gonna sit down in silence and do this. And I also practice meditation a lot. So I feel like those two go hand in hand with becoming self-aware. Like I meditated for a long time.
And so with those two kind of put together, like what does that look like for someone that wants to practice or even try to implement something of that nature? Like if you were to do it right now, like what
Hmm.
is your steps or what is your process like?
The first step is giving yourself grace, understanding that life is long, and just
I love this.
you have to start because what'll happen is a lot of people, and my this is my favorite thing to tell people who start meditating. I'm like, if you expect to levitate off the ground while you're sitting crisscross applesauce after a week, that is crazy. There's literally monks. There's monks who've been meditating for decades, and they only reach that point of mental clarity and mental silence for like a split second. Like for me, meditation was just to clear my subconscious for the day. So I'd wake up at 4 in the morning. I journal. My journal is always next to me. Journal, and because your subconscious is fresh as soon as you reach out of a dream state. Um, so I'd write everything down that's just on my mind, and I got that from one high school, and then this book called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. I'm gonna drop a lot of books this episode, by the way. So in high school, we had a class where they'd make us write for 5 minutes in the beginning of class, just anything, and the point was just to fill the page, and I did that, but I didn't keep doing it after I graduated because I was like, I'm not in that class anymore. And then I was going through a rut when I was trying to make a project. I was working on a music project and I just didn't know what to write about. And then I was watching a J. Cole interview and he mentioned the book The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And again, you try to emulate your favorite people. So I worked in a college at the time, so I just went to the library and I was like, "Y'all have this book?" She was like, "Yeah, no one's ever checked that book out." So I was like, "All right, I'm checking
Mm.
it out." I read it, took notes, and one of the biggest points in that book was something called morning pages, where first thing in the morning you write what's in your subconscious. So I just started journaling again. Um, and then again, as I mentioned, during my bouts of depression, I wanted to go see a therapist because I'm a big advocate for therapy. So at 20, I went to see a therapist, and she taught me about mindfulness and meditation, and I just gave it a shot because again, life is long. So I was like, all right, whatever, if this thing works, it works. If not, I'll spend my entire life meditating.
So cool.
No, Courtney, you good? Okay.
I'm just taking it all in. I'm taking it all in. I well, first of all, let me just say this is not the way I thought the conversation was going, and I'm so happy. Because I mean, just from what Ronnie and I were talking about like these are the questions I'm going to ask him, and this is what we
Hmm.
want to get into, and habits and things like that. But when you really think about it, you have to understand yourself. You have to know yourself. You have to
Hmm.
know what works for you. You have to know, like you mentioned, how to calm your mind. If you got all this stress going on day to day and you can't figure it out and you don't know why you're feeling the way you're feeling, how are you going to stay routine? How are you going
Correct.
to prioritize the things that
Absolutely.
you need in your life? So it makes so much sense that this is kind of where it started, and not
Hmm.
necessarily that everyone has to go through exactly what you went through, or not everyone has to see a therapist to have routine in their life, or
Right,
not
right, for
everyone has
sure.
to meditate and things like that, but it makes
Hmm.
so much sense that that is the path kind of that you took. And
Hmm.
I'm just it's warming my heart. So um, no, I love that. I didn't know that. And
Hmm.
one thing that I did want to mention in terms of journaling, just if that's a tool that people kind of get out of this episode, is especially seeing your journal and how much writing there was, which
Hmm.
is fantastic. If people kind of are storytellers or are able to get their words out like that, that's great. But one thing that I always recommend if you're not, I actually struggle a lot with journaling.
Mm.
I've thought about it. I mentioned before this episode, I got my notebook. This is something that I'm like really dedicated to more recently is I got to start doing this. I tell
Yeah.
everybody how great it is. I got to start doing it myself. But anyway, what I share with my clients a lot is don't feel the need to just write and write and write. Yes, filling the page like that assignment that you mentioned is fantastic, but there's also a benefit to just labeling. I'll make an outline for my clients where it's like
Hmm.
um, situation, emotion, reaction. So it's like, what happened today
Right,
or highs and lows of today? How did you feel after that happened? How did you react? How would you like to have react? Or something
right.
like that. So it's like, I want to journal, but I know I'm not a storyteller, or I know I'm not
Hmm.
going to be able to. I end up just having full conversation with myself when I'm journaling, and I'm like,
Right.
where is this even going? And I'm
Hmm.
like writing that. So I get a little bit lost. But if you feel that, that part of journaling isn't going to work for you, make an outline of just the questions you want to ask yourself and then just answer
Hmm.
those questions. Even if it's just, I did a lot of bullet journaling.
Hmm.
Um, my best friend, Karina, in grad school was really big on that. And it got me into it where it's just, how did I feel today?
Hmm.
This. Or on a scale of 1 to 10, where am I at today? Just the number. So you come back to it, and all you
Mm.
got to fill out is this color, this number, whatever it is that you're tracking, super quick. You just did it 5 minutes before bed. and then that was your
Hmm.
journaling. So
Right.
the reason I just want to bring that up because there's so many different ways to do these skills. You don't have to
Yeah.
be a certain type of person, but yeah, I think it's really awesome that's kind of the path that you've taken.
Yeah, I agree. My journaling, there's no structure to it, but I saw that, and again, this is mentioned in the book, there becomes a point where you start seeing what you're writing consistently. And that's whatever is weighing on your subconsciousness. Like I'd always end my journal entries the same way. And I've been doing that since I started this. Um, so I fully agree with you. There is no tried and true way to do journaling. I just think that it's a habit that everyone should pick up. And just, if you have the conversation with yourself in your book, call it a diary if you want. You know what I mean? I'm gonna call it a journal because it's like, yeah, it's my journal, not my diary. But there's been times where I've gone beyond filling the page. Like the end of the year, I can show you guys journal entries. The end of the year is usually when I have like 4 or 5 pages. And I just talk about the things that I've done that year, the things that have been weighing on my mind, all of that. Because this is something that I also like to revisit if I'm feeling something that I felt when I was younger, I'm gonna the first resource is to go back to my journal, see how I handled it, see what it made happen for me, and just reflect that journal is a perfect mirror to go back and reflect on. So it's your own autobiography.
Yeah. It's a good way to not try to remember everything at the same time because our brain isn't
Correct.
meant to try to remember everything. As
Hmm.
Leon will say, he's creating what we call a second brain, which
Hmm.
we'll touch upon. We'll touch upon that. But I think something you said is really significant that I don't think a lot of people do, which of course is reflection, but also talking to themselves.
Hmm.
That's not a weird thing, guys.
At
I
all.
do it a lot. I do it a lot. And I mean, like people would look at me like, yes, I am talking to myself. Do you have a problem with it? But I'm more than happy to embrace it. So I want to kind of say that because I know some people are like, why are you talking to yourself? It's, again, that's part of your self reflection. It's just one of those things. But I would just want to make that point because I don't want anybody to get like, you guys are weird. Like, hey, call me weird. I'm
Oh.
more than happy to embrace it. But you
Mhm.
said 4 a.m. You wake up. Why in the hell do you wake up at 4 a.m.?
So I wanted to get a head start on my day. Um,
Ah,
so there were jobs that I've worked where the shift starts at 7, the shift starts at 8, 8:30. Um, and I'm a huge fan of if if self isn't taken care of, I can't give to the world. Um, so
mm,
again, as I mentioned, I wanted to
mm,
become more approachable in high school, right? I wanted to be friendly. Every job I had, people were like, "Oh man, I love your energy. Like you smile a lot. You're nice to be around." Right? All of that came from me taking care of myself first. Like it getting up at 4 a.m. was my morning coffee. You know how some people are grumpy without their coffee and it's like, don't talk to me. Don't talk to me if I haven't journaled, meditated, worked out, had breakfast. And I was able to knock all of those things out by the time I was ready for work, only if I got up at 4 a.m. 4 a.m. is not anything that I recommend to anyone at all, at all. I'm like when I say that, it's been an amazing conversation starter over the years that I've been doing it. Because you're like, what the hell? Why are you getting up so early? What's wrong with you? And then we go into the things that I do at
yeah,
4 a.m. and then beyond. And it's like, wow. And a lot of people are surprised by it. But now with having a kid, again, I went into my 20s with everything kind of mapped out. Did everything go as planned? Maybe not. But for the most part, they did. And I knew that I wanted to have certain habits so that my next generation could imitate me. You know what I mean? Because I had no role model, so I want to be a role model for my kids. So everything that I'm doing is going to impact my child. He's gonna be like, oh man, my dad gets up at 4 a.m. I gotta do it. You know what I mean? I gotta work out, I gotta meditate, I gotta journal. And he'll become his own individual and see what works for him. Because again, I will reiterate it. 4 a.m. is not for everybody. I personally hate 4 a.m. But once you're up and you get it out the way, it's one of the greatest feelings ever, just being up in complete silence and the entire world is silent. It's like there's
Yeah.
no peace, there's no peace like it. There's no peace like it.
I
I
mean,
have to.
go ahead, go ahead,
I'm.
go ahead, Courtney. Go ahead.
I have to know what time you go to sleep. Like I.
So, all right. The caveat to everything that I just said, Um, I haven't been getting up at 4 a.m. Again, COVID impacted me a lot because I could work from home. So there's no getting it clocking in at 8:30 and I got to get on the road by 7:45, whatever. So I haven't gotten up at 4 a.m. in a while. After this episode, I'm gonna make it a duty to get to start that again because I miss the feeling. But anyways,
We're
the
starting habits.
the time, yeah, restarting habits. The time that I would go to sleep, I can't go to sleep now because at 29, I have to get more sleep. The one habit that I have been tracking all year is my sleep. Like I use this app called Sleep Cycle, and so I gauge my nights. But to answer your question, I used to go to bed at 11, so I'd get 5 hours of sleep every day.
Mm-mm.
It's terrible. It's terrible. But listen, 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 listen. I had a psych professor when I was in college. I She liked to analyze me too because I never took notes. She was like, "How are you getting good grades and you're not taking notes?" She pulled me into her office. She was like, "Come to my office hours." She said, "How are you getting good grades and you're not taking notes?" I was like, "I got a photographic memory." She was like, "Really?" I was like, "Yeah." So she tested it, and then I was like, "I just remember everything that you talk about," and then just she's like, "Stop relying on that. It's gonna get worse as you get older." And
Huh?
ironically enough, this year I've been getting a little frustrated because my memory's been slipping. Like I've been known by a lot of people as like having a really good memory, and I just haven't been remembering things. And then another thing we talked about is sleep. I told her I was like, I don't sleep a lot. If I could, I wouldn't sleep at all. She was like, that's horrible, and that memory thing is not gonna work if you don't sleep. So,
Mhm.
we'd have our back and forths to the point where I started studying sleep, right? And everyone needs a different amount of sleep per night.
Mhm.
Einstein needed 10 hours. Thomas Edison supposedly survived off of 20-minute cat naps throughout the day. Um, and then there's people, I personally think that my optimal sleep is 6.5 to 7 hours. Anything more than that, I feel terrible. Anything less than that, I feel terrible. Um, and then so I was getting my 5 hours, and my I tracked 1,355 days on that app. So that's a little
Jeez.
over 4 years, 4 or 5 years, right? Um, and my average sleep time is 4 hours and 45 minutes.
Mm-mm.
So a lot of people do exactly what you're doing, Courtney. They shake their head at me. They're like, "How? Like that's unsustainable." But I sustained it for a while. Now I'm trying to prioritize sleep a little bit more. It's really bad for your heart. It's really bad for your heart to not sleep. But
And I'm not. This is not a judgy shaking my head. This is
no, no, no,
just
it's fine.
I could not do it.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
I could not do it. But
So I do want to say, if anyone wants to try the 4 a.m. and you don't have responsibilities like kids and you're able to set a bedtime and keep that schedule, ideally you should go to bed at 10, the latest, the absolute latest. Be in bed at 9:30 and don't do the things that stimulate you so that you can't get good sleep. Read a book and make sure that you're like sleeping by 10. That way, you can get a good, what is that, 6 hours? Six and a half is pushing it. That's really pushing it. I'm not gonna be one of those guys that's saying, "Oh, you can survive off of three, you can survive off of four." You shouldn't do that. That's very unhealthy. But I was able to sustain it for a while, and boy, was I optimal. Like, I learned a lot of shit surviving off of 4.5 hours of sleep a night for my entire 20s. I was a machine.
Yeah, it is peaceful at when everyone else is sleeping. That's one thing I will say.
Absolutely.
That's the one thing that I enjoy about waking up early
Hmm.
is the it's not noisy at all. And it's just like,
Hmm.
wow, it's so silent. Like, oh man, you just got to experience it in order for you to really understand what we're talking about here. But I want to kind of shift gears and go more on the application aspect because we talked a lot about what you do
Right.
to apply yourself. How is it that you maintain it?
Um, so another book I'll name drop is Atomic Habits. In 2019,
Man, they should be giving us a record deal after this one.
I know some
All the
sort of
books, all these
endorsements, right? Yeah.
books.
So, in 2019, I listened to 50 audiobooks. Again, these are just the things that I've done, and it's so funny looking back on it because I remember setting the goal and then doing it. Um, but it sounds ridiculous even to me saying it. But there's a study that says the average CEO reads 50 books a year. So I'm like, I want to be a CEO one day. So let me do the 50 books. And so this was a year, 2019 was a year that I made a conscious decision to pay off all my debt and learn financial literacy. So the fun thing for me when it comes to, I'll set my year goal and then I'll have an underlying goal that keeps me busy during that time. Because if you set a goal and on January 1st and then you say by December 31st, I want to do this, if you don't have something else to do in that time, you're going to be done by February easily. So I said, I'm going to be out of debt by the end of the year, but for fun, I'm going to listen to 50 audiobooks, right? So, again, it was mainly self improvement, psychology, and money books. I kind of threw money books in there because I was like, well, if my overarching goal is to pay off all my debt, learning about money only makes sense. So, Atomic Habits was one of those books. An Atomic Habit talks about systems. It talks
Mm,
about not necessarily having a routine and a to do list. It talks about setting up an environment that allows you, that kind of encourages that habit. You know what I mean? I sleep with my journal right next to me. It's the first thing that I see in the morning. If I had to go somewhere to go get it, there's no way that I could journal every day. So that's a system that I have in place. My nightstand is next to me. I used to sleep with the journal under the pillow. So, like, I would feel it on the wake up. Grab it, boom, right? I'm done. I'm going with my day. Um, so just applying the habits comes from just you have to create an environment that facilitates it. And if your life is chaotic, you have to learn how to live within that chaos and create a system within that chaos, you know?
Courtney, what do you think? You think this guy sounds too good to be true?
I I'm definitely I have a way to respond to that without responding to it. I definitely am just impressed
Oh
with
man.
like the idea that you kind of found it yourself,
Hmm.
and came up with these systems yourself. And I know you mentioned reading and things like that, but you also have to decide to read.
Hmm.
So you sought out the information, even though the information isn't all just from you. But yeah, no, I'm definitely impressed with you putting those systems in place, and it's so true. It's just like people will say, if you have trouble getting up, like don't have your phone next to you, set
Hmm.
your alarm
Mm,
elsewhere, or
right.
whatever it is. Just creating those things where it's like if you're gonna struggle to do it, you got to find a way to make yourself and like you said, set up those systems. And you're right, like living in that chaos is what one small thing can I change to set a
Hmm.
routine, and from there, does that work for me? Like that experiment that you mentioned, is this
Hmm.
working for me? Okay, what else can I set up until this is a little bit more organized and a little bit less chaotic? And
Right.
that is something I will say, that's easier said than done. A lot of people who are living in chaos choose to live in chaos. They don't realize that they're choosing it, but
Absolutely.
they're so used to it, and that's so ingrained in them that they would prefer chaos because discomfort is uncomfortable.
Right.
Um, but so that's a really difficult thing to do, and that's why I recommend, like you said, just one thing at a time. If it's
Hmm.
changing your sleep, if it's adding journaling, if it's the way that you eat, because that's going to impact your sleep, that's going to
Hmm.
impact your mood throughout the day. Um, but yeah, just one thing to improve that chaos. But yeah,
So, to that point, there's a fun exercise that I like to do when all of my habits go to shit. Hopefully, we could curse on here. When all my habits go to shit, um, I do this thing called habit stacking, where I slowly get back into my routines, easiest to hardest habits. And what I'll do is I'll focus on getting one down, like you said. So let's say for a few months, I don't do anything. I wake up, I feel like shit. I don't journal, I don't meditate, I don't do anything. I'll start journaling again. And I'll focus on just going every single day journaling. That's it. Not, I'm going to jump back in and become that machine that I was when I was 22, because obviously something came into place and threw my life into chaos. So I'm going to journal every single day. I'm going to do that for a week. And then next week, I'm going to work on another habit. So now I'm going to journal every day and meditate. And it's for me, the analogy that I tell people um, whenever they fall off or whenever they're trying something new is positive momentum is extremely harder to maintain than negative momentum is. To go a bit further, imagine pushing a boulder up a hill. That's hard. It takes no effort to push that boulder down the hill. Just flick it. It's gonna go down the hill by itself. You know what I mean? So if you start doing shit that you're not fond of, and those are your negative habits, you'll keep doing that because boy, does your brain love to not do things. Your brain, the only thing it wants to do is procreate. That's it. It doesn't even want to eat. The basic things like breathing and swallowing, that's so far behind. Like that is in your reptilian brain. Like that's the thing that just keeps you alive so you can go procreate. Everything else, it wants to choose the path of least resistance. So it takes no effort to be lazy. It takes all the effort in the world to be great. You get what I'm saying? So positive momentum is harder to maintain than negative momentum. So, instead of saying, damn, my boulder went all the way down the mountain again, start making a new boulder, push a little rock up the hill. That's easier to do. And not to mention that sense of accomplishment is it's way more motivating than saying, all right, I bounced back from being down in the dumps and I'm right back to where I was. No, you say, I'm a little bit better than I was last week, that's just as good.
Mhm.
Yep. Yep. It sounds like if you haven't already, go listen to our last episode where we talk about literally the tool of the month. And we talk about this exactly. I mean, I have 5 things that I do every day to make sure I'm always building habits and making sure I'm getting tasks done. But you can make it. You can do exactly what Leon just said with that same formula of incorporating the tool of the month. And we could do this all day long for you guys. I mean, what do you guys really want?
Hmm.
But I want to talk because you mentioned when things are in chaos, you mentioned kind of what you do is more like the habit stacking.
Hmm.
And so one of the I think you mentioned to me at least one of the things that was tough for you that I know that you recently experienced was coding for 100 days
Hmm.
straight.
Hmm.
And a lot of the people that actually kept you going because again, I would never forget it was this one phrase, see it through, my boy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That was the one phrase that you were saying. I was even saying it to you because
Every
again, just
day.
doing something every day
Hmm.
nonstop. For how long, like in terms of hours, were you doing it for?
At minimum 3 hours a day. It was a lot. It's crazy.
And
Yeah, so you're doing something for 100 days for
For
three
3 hours.
hours out of your day.
Yeah.
How is it like? How do you see that go through? Like for real, for real.
Um, so I feel like the biggest catalyst for change is anger. Um, when you're really, really, really frustrated with how things are going in your life, you'll change. You know, you could
you
you could
say
go
you
to
you you say
you'll
you don't
change.
change.
No, you
Oh,
will
you will.
change. You'll
Okay.
change because what happens is that anger fuels you. And I hated my job. I didn't hate the people. I never hated anyone that I worked with. It was great. But boy, did I despise like not being mentally challenged by my work. Work doing something with half a brain. The only reason I was able to listen to 50 audiobooks is because my fingers were doing the work. My brain was never active. And, I- it was mundane and I just wasn't a fan of what I was doing. So I said, something's got to give. So I said, all right, let that hate fuel you, go to work every day, and then do something that pisses you off, or make somebody say something that pisses you off. So you leave every day and you say, I gotta do this shit. Come home, open up my laptop, code every day. Right? Um, that was probably the hardest thing that I've ever had to do in my life because it was every single day. I didn't take a single day off, not even the weekends. So burnout is inevitable. So what I did was I had people publicly hold me accountable because that's another great way to have these habits continue. So I just did it in public, and I'm usually someone who doesn't really publicly talk about my goals. Um, Back to 2019 when I was doing when my goal was to get financially stable and literate. I did another thing called morning motivation videos where I posted a motivational video every day on Instagram, right? So again, if you tie in the big goal to the smaller ones and you just create this little funnel of goals that you have to do something every day, that's a form of habit stacking too. Because, all right, if the first thing that I was doing was posting that video on Instagram, that means that I could have stayed consistent with that. That was that little small win for the day that made me say, okay, I'm going to do something else that I wanted to do every single day and then just slowly build on that. So back to the 100 Days of Code. I publicly put on Instagram, I put on Twitter, I said, I'm coding for 100 days. Here's day one. Nobody paid attention for day one. People won't pay attention because they have their own things going on. Around day 50, if 5 o'clock came and I didn't log what I was doing, people would be like, "What's up, man? You not coding no more?" And I'm like, "No, I'm coding. I just haven't logged." You know what I mean? Like things are getting a little bit harder, so I can't just say, "Oh, I did this small thing." And then there was this there was this meme that was like, "Got to see it through, my boy." Like, and I just
Yeah.
I just took that and I just ran with it and I started using the hashtag in my 100 days of code as well. And then people around me started saying it. And I was like, "Oh shit, okay, cool." Like it was very nice to have that sense of community while I did it. But again, the anger fueled me, the hate of just being stagnant and no growth in what I was doing. I was like, I gotta get into tech. And I did the 100 days. um, I want to say 2 weeks after I got my first job offer, and like my entire life changed after that. I told myself I'd never do 100 days of code again because it was so hard. It was so mentally taxing, but I'm gonna do it again. It's like, what are you, a masochist? Why do you want to hurt yourself again? But now, now that I've gotten into the industry, there's some things that I feel like I can refine and get better at. So 100 days of code is a great habit to start. If if you do want to start it, but you want to have that balance, I would only do 5 days a week. Don't do 7 days a week and do 100 straight days because you'll burn yourself out. You'll stop at day 40 and you'll feel like shit for not finishing something that you set out to do.
Cool. There's so many tools that
Hmm.
just as you're talking that you're bringing up that I don't think it's it's hard to know that these are tools. It's hard to know that these are things that people can use if you haven't used them as tools or if you're
Hmm.
not in the field that discusses the tools.
Hmm.
So I just wanted to point that out because I know we've talked a lot about action and a lot about adding more action items and things like that, tools that we can use to our episodes. And I just wanted to put out there that like talking about small wins, that's a
Hmm.
tool in itself, and that's something to focus on in itself. I know we talked before about just like getting to know yourself and the importance of knowing yourself and who you are and how important that is with any
Hmm.
sort of goal setting. I think we minimize that just in society, just in general.
Yeah.
So that's a huge thing. Like your self talk. And it's funny that you mentioned anger. I definitely don't disagree that anger can fuel people, but me personally, I'm the exact opposite. So
Mhm.
Mm.
anger, pain, I'm in bed. Good night.
Yeah.
I'm I'm out. Like honest, I'm gonna be completely honest. Ice
Mhm.
cream, wine, I'm in bed. Like if it's that bad, if it's that type of night. So to me, the self talk, the mindfulness, and the small wins, or
Mhm.
like you had mentioned, like, hey, this we did good today. Like we accomplished this today.
Mhm.
This morning, if I go upstairs, my room is clean, my bed is made before this episode. Before
Yeah.
I had to go record. So just those teeny tiny things, and like Ronnie mentioned in our previous episode, like how did I win the day? How many things did I accomplish before I had to go do this or before I went to
Mhm.
bed, whatever the thing is, and just how important these little tools are. And for anyone who is listening and who picks these things out, I really hope people ask. I hope people reach out to you, Leon. And I hope people reach out to us and just say, tell me more about the small wins. Tell me more about, whatever it is, or habit stacking, for example. I wrote it down and put a star next to it because I love that. And that's something I really
Mhm.
do want to get going and start and try,
Mhm.
because I have been looking for ways to, like you said, we have all these goals, and it's like I want to do this, but I want to get better at this, and I want to try this
Mhm.
too, and it's just like how do you do
Do it
that?
all.
And I don't want to be a January 1st person. Why can't I start now?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's start. And not that there's anything wrong with that. And I know that I
Mhm.
really, I really, truly am that type of person. I'm gonna wait
Same.
till September 1st. I'm gonna wait till this day. Oh, my lucky
Yeah.
number is the 15th. I'll wait for the
Mhm.
15th to start. And it's like, just do it. Just
Yeah.
do something that's going to better yourself. And so that habit stacking. But yeah, I really hope people do, like, hear some of these tools and hear some of the things we're talking about, and ask for more, because just the amount of information that you're giving, I don't think people are understanding like how many therapy
Yeah.
sessions of information you're providing right now.
Yeah,
But
and just listening back to being asked the questions and then having to think about
Reflect on it.
what I've gone through to get there. Just like wow, like there really has been a lot of stuff, and it's so organic to talk about it because I lived through it. Um, I remember I love that you call them the small wins because I don't think that I actually said that. I might have, but I remember um I was gonna come out with a blog post for off my website, which I won't mention right now because my website is down, but I'm gonna put it back up. But anyways, I had a blog post called Small Wins, right? And to market it, what I did was I waited till the end of the year and I just randomly put a question on Instagram. I was like, what is something that you did this year that you're happy about, no matter how small it is? One person answered after like 5 hours, right? I didn't even care for the engagement. It was just how I was going to market it. I was going to put it out anyways. One person answered after 5 hours, and I reposted it, and I just bigged them up. I just made it sound like the most amazing thing ever, and they messaged me back, and they were like, "Bro, I didn't think it was that big, but thank you." Like it really is that big. And I was like, yo, you got to celebrate the small wins and you have to feel like it's a big win. And then for
exactly.
the whole rest of the day, everybody answered the question. And then I just put the blog post at the end and then just like random people were reading it, taking snippets of it, posted on their story. And it just felt like such a beautiful symbiotic, like marketing plan, and it was just all organic for me to just throw that out there because I wanted to big people up. I wanted people to understand that if you got through that year and you did something that you wanted to do, that in and of itself is big, you know what I mean? And again, like I've been off of Instagram for like 3 years now. Like I'll go on and I'll watch stories and I'll scroll, but I haven't posted anything significantly on Instagram for a while. But I grew a following, and people admired me for my resilience and sticking through certain things, and just like because everything that I posted, there was some sort of overarching goal tied to it, and people just liked watching that. Like people sometimes like I was my own TV show, and I was just living my life. It wasn't me purposely trying to like, all right, watch me do this, guys. It was just like, all right, I wanted to teach myself piano, right? So I did this habit called Don't Break the Chain, where I learned from Jerry Seinfeld. Jerry Seinfeld said every single day he wrote a joke in a book and he put a big X on a calendar and he'd make sure he never broke that chain. So January 1st, I'm one of those people too. If the month starts on a Sunday, you better believe I'm gonna do something that month that's super significant. Like I'll go through the whole calendar and say, "Oh
That's
shit,
so
August
funny.
starts on a Sunday? It's over." And I wait. Top of the week, boom. Top of the week, new month, new everything. I'm going crazy. So I'm a January 1st person. I wanted to learn piano January 1st, 2018. So I did something called Don't Break the Chain. First day of January, I'm randomly playing keyboard and I just cross off the X and I put it all on my story, right? Nobody knows what the fuck I'm talking about. So I do it again January 2nd. By the end of the month, people are waiting for me to post. I post it, they're like, and then this one of my good friends, he's an illustrator and I reach out to him for everything. He started running 2 miles a day because I did Don't Break the Chain. And he was like, I'm gonna start my chain February 1st. He lost like 45 pounds that year just running because I started Don't Break the Chain. I was like, I just wanted to play piano, bro, but more power to you. You know what I mean? I was so happy for him. He was like, yo, you inspired me to, just stay consistent with something. And, like, it feels nice having that impact, but also not doing it for the recognition feels even better because when I do get recognized for it, I'm like, oh shit, I'm so glad. Even if I could change one person's mentality or their mind on it, it's a nice feeling.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think the like you talking about it being public, but not only public to other people, but this doesn't make sense, but in my head I'm saying like public to you. We're having that I every time it's so funny how similar it is, but anytime I have something big or anytime I have a phrase that I cling to or a title of something that I cling to, like what you're saying now, I write it down or I'll paint it on something and put it up on my
Hmm.
wall or it's on my I had a therapist a couple months ago say, um, uh, the future is an accumulation of todays. And
Yes. Ooh.
as soon as she said that, I was like, I don't hear anything else you're saying because that was like stuck in my brain. And I
Yeah.
immediately came down and I still have it on my letterboard. It's just one of those things that's like your brain just clings to, and it's like I need that. I need to hold on
Yeah.
to that. And whatever it is. So like I know we mentioned I don't want to spill all the secrets, but the actually all the secrets will be spilled by that point. But the win the day. So just something to hold on to where it's like this is the phrase that I'm clinging to. This is what I need to remember. This is
All
what
right.
needs I need to motivate me. How strong that can be, and yeah, it's really cool. I've heard of it. So not so much break the chain, but someone told me. I think when I was in high school, they were like, you can't take 2 days off in a row.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's what
Absolutely.
I've heard too. You can't take 2 days off in a row.
Yeah.
So it's like I was tired yesterday, but that would be 2 days, so I got to get
Yeah.
to do it.
Yeah.
And I thought
Yeah.
that was really cool because especially just giving grace and understanding where people come from and just that life happens. A lot of
Hmm.
that, like, don't break the chain. I'm like, that's a lot of pressure
Oh
to
yeah.
do every single day. So I
Oh
like the
yeah.
2 days in a row. I like the idea of 4 times a week or whatever it is, depending on the
Hmm.
habit that we're talking about. But yeah, I like that there's different titles and different things that we can cling to motivate us.
There's something to be
Mhm.
said about catchphrases. Like it's an anchor. It works as an anchor for you. And again, it's just that small little fire that continuously burns because, all right, it, goals are huge. Goals are huge, especially when you're like, oh, this year I'm gonna do this, this, and this. This is something that you never tried to do your entire life. Like, you better have some sort of anchor to keep you going. You know what I mean? And that's just for me, that's been the best way to maintain habits, just having those anchors and those little catchphrases. The don't miss 2 days thing. I had a good friend of mine. She's an amazing animation person, and we talked. She was teaching me Adobe Premiere, and she explained to me. She was like, "I do this every day." And I was like, "Okay." She was like, "You need to do this every day if you really want to be great at it." I was like, "All right." There's things that I've done every day. That's fine. And she explained to me, she gave me this quote from this musician. He said, if I miss a day, and I'm gonna butcher it, if I miss a day, I notice. If I miss 2 days, my band notices. If I miss 3 days, then the audience notices. And if I miss 4 days, the entire world notices.
Mhm.
Mm,
So that is a great way to kind of keep yourself and understand that like the world is watching, but put that pressure on yourself. Yeah, the world is watching. They're also not. Everybody has everything going on. Nobody really cares about you the way that we make it seem. Like I used to run around feeling like everybody was against me. Was like such a weird thing to think. But anyways, I digress. Just don't allow yourself, don't let yourself down. Don't let yourself down. But also, life is long. Give yourself grace. If you screw up and you mess up on what you wanted to do this year, there's always next year, God willing. You know what I mean? There's always next week. Because let's really get into the nitty gritty of it. Courtney, you and I are the January 1st people. If you're also a January 1st person, we could go to January 1st anonymous. You can start February 1st. Time is a
Uh-huh.
man-made construct. Do whatever
Mhm.
you want. A year is a year, no matter when you start. You understand what I'm saying? And just, but take it day by day. I love that quote that you said. The future is just an accumulation of today's. Like, that's beautiful. I think that encompasses everything we talked about.
Mhm. Absolutely.
but some people here, I have to be that guy because
Uh,
pressure is something that not everybody can handle.
Hmm.
And maybe they don't do well with give themselves grace, right? And
mhm.
that's why I sad to say, but I think that's part of the reason why we have suicide being an actual thing, right?
Hmm.
Some people just can't do it.
Mhm.
So, like for that individual, not to say this is advice or anything, but like for that individual that just doesn't understand or doesn't know how to give themselves grace or even how to take the pressure off of them and understand, like, hey, I can take a break. I think that that's one of the things where it's like, yo, how is it that that person should navigate, just trying to accomplish goals, not
Hmm.
even what do we do to make or break habits, but and I want this to be a group conversation because at this point I think we're going into something a little bit differently, but I
Yeah.
think it's something that we could really talk about. And it's just for those individuals that are struggling with, they don't do well with having pressure on themselves and they don't know how to give themselves grace. How is it that they can still accomplish goals, just their own set goals, without realizing that I have all this pressure on me and I must do this at whatever at time period or time frame.
So
Whoever wants to.
I'd like to answer that. And I answer that in two ways. I had a manager tell me when I worked at a deli, the world is full of 10% assholes. Your job is to not be one, right? Um, when he told me that, that I did another self-reflection session. And I said, how am I being an asshole in anyone's life, right? Because when I'm ready to do something, I'm very tunnel vision and I don't really care about what goes on around me. So I had to reflect and see how that affects others around me. So to answer the question, part one, the way that you can the way that we can help someone who isn't able to give themselves grace or to maintain certain habits, don't be an asshole. You learn to give somebody grace. You learn to big somebody up when they're doing the smallest little thing. I'm a big fan of just giving people little breadcrumbs of just compliments,
Mhm.
like, bro, you're doing great. You know what I mean? And some people might see it as pretentious. Some people might feel a little weird about me doing it, but I'm genuine. It's like, bro, you're surviving. Like that in and of itself, like right now in these days, it takes so much just to maintain. So like I'll just big somebody up on, oh man, I'm glad that you're still doing your hobby while you're working a job that you don't like. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
I think that one way that we can help people is just be as kind as you can to people, bro. Like it takes nothing. It really takes nothing. Um, so then, secondly, from a personal standpoint, I really want to emphasize habit stacking. You know what I mean? And also, also, if you're somebody who kind of struggles with maintaining consistency, you struggle with mental health or something like that, give habit stacking and those little small wins a try, because now you're reinforcing just like what accomplishment feels like. That little bit of happiness is like, all right, that's how people quit shit cold turkey. Like, bro, I went a week without smoking a cigarette. I think I could go a month. You know what I mean? They go a month, they feel great. They go a couple years, they're like, I forgot I even smoked cigarettes. You know, that's easier said than done, but again, it all starts with something small. If it's spreading your bed, that's gonna make you feel nice, spread your bed every day. Just try. Just try. Life is long.
Mhm.
I should have counted how much times you said life is long, but
Yeah.
because it's true though, it's really true. Courtney, you have anything to add on to that?
Of course I do. So it's actually funny because I think I have the exact same answer. The,
Oh, please.
Let me communicate it. So literally the way that what popped into my head is exactly what he just said. Of course, I'm going to say it a little bit different, but um, and a couple things and a couple more like phrases popped into my head too, which was interesting. Because you talked about, of course, giving yourself grace is I think the main thing for someone who is really really struggling to get those habits into place. And you had mentioned we can give you grace, right? Your community can give some grace. Your community can hype you up and things like that. And the phrase or whatever that I thought of was that you cannot empower someone else, but you can give them the tools to empower themselves. And
Mm,
Hmm.
that's what I feel my job is as a therapist. My job is not to
mhm.
empower anybody, but it's to give them the tools to empower themselves, because true empowerment doesn't come from anybody. It comes from
Right.
within yourself. So, and that's what you reminded me of, and there are ways to do that as a support system. And I do want to dig just a little bit deeper, because the way that I think of it is I do have clients, and again, just as a reminder, I work with 12 to 18, which is a really really difficult time just in
Right.
general.
Right.
But then when there's trauma and loss and grief and all those different things, it's an exceptionally difficult time in your life. So I absolutely have clients who just struggle with getting out of bed. Just
Hmm.
I have a lot of clients who are still doing virtual school, and they really struggle to just even sign on. They don't talk to anybody. They're not moving their bodies or going to the gym or going outside, anything like that. So they really struggle with any of those things. And I have a client specifically in my head right now who she would really just put so much pressure on herself that I'm behind my class. I'm not on track to graduate with my class right now. I can't believe I let myself get this bad. I'm not eating good. I'm not sleeping good. And all I would say is, okay, why?
Hmm.
She's like, because I don't feel good right now. I'm like, why don't you feel good? And she's like, well, my dad passed away. I'm like,
Mm.
isn't that reason enough to not be doing well?
Right.
So, and that's all I told her was, why are you behind in your class? Why aren't you up, right where your class is with work, with graduating, whatever it is? And she's like, well, my dad passed, so I took time off. I'm like, you're
Mm.
allowed to do that. That's
Absolutely.
Yeah.
okay. And not that it has to be
Absolutely.
a loss in the family, not that that's one example, but
Yeah.
a lot of times we're like, oh, I should be here, I should be there, or these people, I'm 28, 30-year-olds are supposed to be here, right? We talked a little bit
Yeah.
about that with George, where it's
Yep.
like, this is the expectation for where we're at. I should be doing this. Why can't I get to this point? And if you really think about it, answer that question.
Yeah.
Why haven't you?
Yeah.
These are the things that I've experienced. These are the things that I'm struggling with. Those are valid reasons for not being where I want to be. So now let's go into habit stacking.
Right.
Now let's go into small wins. Now let's
Mhm.
go into, now that I can understand where I'm at and why that's where I'm at.
Hmm.
Now that's how I start to understand that grace for myself and
Hmm.
understanding myself. Now let's get to know a little bit more of myself, and that's where the empowerment comes in. And like I said, that's where you start to use grace and things like that. But
For sure.
yeah, so
Uh,
communicated it differently, but it's really the same thing.
yeah, for sure, for sure. And there's many ways to skin a cat. And I think expectations are just like the biggest thief in accomplishing anything, because like don't expect anything, just do it. Also, I want to name drop two books since we're on the topic of like people who may not have the mental capacity of doing what they need to do. I struggled with depression for a little bit, and I try to read my way out of it. I listened to inspirational videos and I read. There was a really good book that I read called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Amazing book, amazing book. If you can pick that up and you can read it, I think that's life changing. And then something that you mentioned, there's a book called Start With Why. It's not going to help you with your mental health, but it's going to help you work backwards for anything that you want to do. It's a great book. And I think I
Mhm.
don't even know who the author is, but I've read it. And it's just it's very important again to just self-reflect and see why you can't do something rather than just say I'm not capable of doing this, I can't do it. Why can't you do it? There could be some underlying factor that's preventing you from doing it right now, and that's okay. I'm glad that you said that part because I think that's the I think that is the basis of life. When things are okay, that means that you cannot be okay with where you are. But for now, you have to be okay with it. Like it is what it is. Like this is what's gotten me fucked up. I'll make my way over to where I want to be eventually. Life is long. I'm gonna say it again. We can put a counter on the bottom.
No, that was
Yeah.
that was amazing. If you guys don't have anything else to touch upon, I want to say that I asked you guys that question because I'm a person that I work. I've learned that I've worked really well when my back is against the wall.
Yeah.
Literally, it's just
Mhm.
one of those things that I've learned that I do well in, and I sometimes put myself in those situations
Mhm.
intentionally because I know
Mhm.
I'm going to do well, and it's
Right.
just because I find ways to work through the situation. Whereas on the other end, if things are well, I kind of just like you mentioned, just kind of sit back, laxadates, and just allow the circumstances to really to get the best of me. And sometimes you don't
Mhm.
want that, so you guys were able to hear how to make habits, what happens when you break your habit, and even if you have a really tough time with starting a habit or restarting a habit. There's so many different things that you could take away from this conversation. Now, I know, Leon, you mentioned that you're not really active on social media. So if somebody does want to reach out to you, and like, what would you say is the best way for them to reach out for questions or anything of that nature?
So I do still have the Instagram app,
Mhm.
and I do check it every single day. I'm just not actively posting daily because right now my main focus is just getting better at my job. But reach out to me on Instagram if you're okay with interacting with the page with no post. My Instagram is Leon Noir SR. It's LeonNoir SR. And you can message me. I'll talk to anyone and everyone about anything. I've experienced a lot of stuff in life, and I think that I'm in a position to offer advice, and you could take it if you need.
Yeah. And you're active. Is your Twitter the same? Because I know you're more active on Twitter.
Oh yeah,
Or I should say, sorry, X. I should say X. Sorry.
yeah, yeah.
Sorry, Elon, don't hurt me.
I'm gonna call it Twitter for the rest of my life. But yeah, I do tend to post and reply a lot more on Twitter, because there's a huge tech community over there, and I want to stay active over there. So you can reach out to me there as well. I'm a lot more reluctant to answering random messages on Twitter though, because I have a whole inbox of message requests from bots about crypto. So Instagram is your probably your best bet. um, so yeah, Instagram and Twitter, same at name. I stay consistent everywhere. And I also have a blog on Medium with the same name. Right now I'm writing about tech stuff, but I plan on bringing my blogs from my website over to Medium because I think Medium's an amazing platform. So check me out on Medium at Leon Noir SR as well. And I'll be writing about habits and just my life, and it'll be my virtual diary.
Yeah, there you have it. If Courtney, you have any like thing, last thing to say?
The only other thing I wanted to say is I think we talk a lot about how like we do this because we want to share with the community and like inspire people and help them to learn different tools and things. But we say all the time how just doing this and facilitating the conversations gives so much to us. And I think this
Oh yeah.
episode and this conversation is just a reminder of like how much I when I say I took notes, I mean I took notes, and I'm just, yeah, again, it's a lot of the things that I already say and a lot of the things that we already do in therapy and things like that, but you just need those reminders and that spark and
Hmm.
that pick me up to get it going again, and it really was for me. So yeah, thank you, Leon,
Let's
and this was it was a fun conversation, so I'm excited.
let's
Yeah.
get it. So go ahead.
I was gonna say thanks for having me because I just reminded myself how amazing I am, and how
I love that.
I did a lot. I did a lot, and I've been a little down lately in terms of just I haven't been doing my habits that make me happy in a long time, and just I guess just talking through what that did look like and how it did make me feel is just the spark I needed to just restart again. So thanks for having me, for
Hmm.
real, for real.
That's the walk and grow effect. Now, if you want that safe feeling, you know how to reach out to us, DM us, hashtag, do all that good stuff, or email us at walkandgrow@gmail.com. But until then, continue to apply those perspectives, education, growth, and collaboration, y'all.